My name is Monica Wilkinson Kelly. I'm the archivist at the Edith B. Ford Memorial Library in Auburn, New York. This interview is being conducted as part of the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes Agriculture and Craft Beverage Memory Project. Today is May 13, 2020, and I am interviewing Kim Marconi and Paige Vinson, who are winemakers at Three Brothers Winery. So could you introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Kim Marconi, winemaker at Three Brothers.
And I'm Paige Vinson, winemaker at Three Brothers.
And can you tell me where Three Brothers is located?
Sure. We are on Seneca Lake, just outside of Geneva.
And Paige, could you tell me your background? Do you have a history in agriculture, or what your education
Sure. Yeah, so I'm from the Finger Lakes region. This is home for me. So I grew up seeing winemaking and being a part of local agriculture. But I ended up going to school for fine art and philosophy originally, and after that, I decided I wanted to do something a little more hands-on, and actually went to Finger Lakes Community College for their viticulture and enology program. So that was my educational background before traveling and winemaking and some other areas.
And that's a fairly new program, or how long ago was that established?
I came out of the program, I graduated in 2014. I don't know exactly, but the program was maybe 6 or 7 years old at that point. So it's come a long way, which is wonderful to see. I went back and sat in on a course a few years later just to see how the program was doing, and it's great to see the next generation of folks coming into this industry.
Great. Can you tell me a little about the curriculum?
Sure. Yeah, it's fairly involved. I think for a community college program, it was quite intensive in both enology, winemaking, the chemistry. And the cellar work in winemaking, and then also in viticulture. So growing the grapes, taking care of the land where you're growing them, and also pulling fruit samples and things of that nature. The program itself has a teaching vineyard associated with it and a full winemaking facility. So you're really able to get a lot of that, firsthand experience alongside of the education to really understand the process.
Okay, and no one in your family had this agriculture or winemaking background?
No, my dad had a love of wine and a green thumb, so we grew up gardening and being pretty involved in local agriculture, but not winemaking specific.
Okay. And Kim, can you tell me about your background?
Yeah, sure. I came to the Finger Lakes first for undergrad. I went to Hobart Lamesmith and got a biochem degree. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started working in tasting rooms and ended up working for Swedish Hill up here in Romulus. And then I went and did a master's science, food science, focused on wine micro at Washington State University. And then traveled as well, Bordeaux and Australia, worked at a couple other places in the Finger Lakes, Sheldrake Point being one of them, and then landed here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think people realize what goes into a bottle of wine. A great deal of chemistry.
It's true.
I'm sure that was a big part of your education.
Absolutely.
Several semesters, I'm guessing, and
yeah, for
soil
sure.
testing. Is that something you have to do here, or is that the vineyard manager?
It's more on the vineyard side. I know it was part of my program for my master's, but yeah, that's definitely Natalie's purview.
Okay. And when did you start at the winery here?
This winery, 2018, right before harvest, like 2 days. It was kind of trial by fire. So
okay. And so how many cases of wine do you produce? Can you talk a little about the types of grapes that are grown here it's an estate winery, correct?
Sure. So some of the wines are estate. The vast majority of Stony Lonesome is estate grown. We do purchase from the Finger Lakes for the other two houses, so Passion Feet and back there. We don't grow any hybrids or natives, and those are primarily the varietals that are in those wines.
Gosh, our case production for the Stony Lonesome line is, in probably 6,000 to 8,000 cases a
Maybe
year.
little higher.
Maybe higher. Yeah, it's
had a
grown astronomically in the last handful of years. We've had a couple of interesting vintages, and certainly with the pandemic, growth has increased quite a bit. But those varietals, as Kim was saying, are mostly vinifera. So on our property, we grow a great deal of Riesling, Gruner Veltliner. We have new plantings of Pinot Noir, Cab Franc, and Chardonnay. And then we also have some interesting varieties like Zweigelt and Barbera, which are a little unique for the region.
Right, Northern Italian.
Yeah.
So very robust red wine, which is very unusual for the Finger Lakes. Correct?
Yeah, we are the only planting, as far as we know, of Barbera in the Finger Lakes. So.
Oh, wow. And Gruner Veltliner also?
Yeah.
Yes, you see that a little bit more frequently, but it's, an interesting aromatic, white grape varietal that tends to do well in cool climates like what we have here. So it fits into the portfolio nicely.
And it crops well.
Very, yeah.
And I know it's not harvest time right now, but can you run through what the day is like for you during harvest time?
Oh gosh,
Oh,
yes. It's a fun time of year here. I would say our average day would be we come in and we're either getting fruit off of our farm or receiving fruit. Those are the fun days. We will check its chemistry upon receiving. So we'll look at Brix, pH, and TA, so titratable acidity. We'll get it loaded into the press. So usually we crush or stem whites, and then they'll go directly into the press, and we will fill tanks with juice and let them settle. You want to walk through red?
Yeah, for red wines, generally we bring them in, crush and to stem them as well, and then put them into bins. They won't get pressed immediately the way white wines do. They'll stay in bins through the majority of fermentation. During our day, during harvest, after the crush pad work is cleaned up, we have a lot of work inside too, monitoring every fermentation. We track its temperature and the amount of sugar that has fermented. There are often rackings and transfers. It's a great time of year because there are so many different things happening. It really keeps you on your toes, and you get to try a little bit of everything during harvest.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. I don't think people realize it's year round. It's what happens. We're now May, so what's happening now in the winery?
So we, after the wines are fermented, we will stop whites at a sugar level that we want. Not everything is dry, but we don't try to add any sugar back artificially. So we'll stop with natural sugar, and then we'll blend things. Like, for instance, our Riesling fermentations, we usually do about 14 or 15 different ferments, and we end up making 4 products with it. So we have to taste the tanks together and make the best blends for the wine. And then everything gets polished. So it goes through fining, filtering, and then into bottle for you guys.
Okay. And so how many wines do you produce? Labels and names and brands?
Over 40, 45 for between the 3 houses.
Right.
Stony Lonesome probably has the most.
Right.
Goodness.
I would say Stony Lonesome probably has anywhere between 15 and 25 wines at any given time. We have our staples, but then every year we get to play a little bit in our pilot series label, which is a small label, small batches. Basically experimental things, either varietal or processes that we are just interested in trying. And so that's, this is the time of year where we're blending and putting all that together.
So you're the only 2 winemakers here. Do you feel like you have a lot of freedom to experiment and try new things? Or?
A fair amount. Yeah, I definitely think they let us. Gosh, we started 2 days before harvest, and they really kind of let us go with it. We did some things and some practices that they weren't used to, and they trusted, which was a big ask in a year with a lot of rain.
It is. Yeah, we didn't start in a great vintage, but I think a lot of the relationship is knowing how to hit the target products, and then being able to use your best judgment based on experience to maximize what the year gives you as far as quantity or quality. We get a different curveball thrown every year at us in Finger Lakes, so that's part
right.
of
You
the
never
fun.
know with the weather and
Right.
But you didn't have any bud break this year. I understand. Damaged.
No
so
bud
far.
damage.
No
No,
damage.
yeah.
No,
That's
no.
great.
Everything is just about through bud break in the vineyard now, which hopefully we have no more frost. So that would be our request. Exactly. That's what we're knocking on wood for this time of year.
So as far as women, Paige, how many women were in your program? Is it balanced or it's still outnumbered by men, would you say?
We talk about this a lot. In my program, I don't really remember exactly because the rate of graduation and then continuation into the industry varies drastically. There were a lot of people who went into different directions coming out of the program. In the Finger Lakes, we have a pretty good showing of female winemakers, female cellar hands. It's, I would say, higher generally than what you see in other regions, but worldwide, it's still a male-dominated industry.
And so, what do you have to say about that? Did
Sure,
you have
yeah.
a lot of mostly women in your studies, or men rather?
It was definitely a split, and for sure not necessarily production themed, right? So there's a lot of people in there to go on for further PhDs or research-based studies. So I was one of the few geared towards production in general. But I would say we have there's a winemakers tasting group that we participate in. And over the years, the table has become more and more female dominated, which is great. And a lot of women our age group, maybe a generation up is more male, but it's great.
It's changing.
It is.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about some of the wines that you've been most proudest of?
Sure. Yeah. We, Kim had spoken a little bit earlier about the number of Riesling products that we make each year, how we have 4 staple products, but we often have as many as, 14 or 15 different fermentations going. And that comes from a love of trying different yeast strains and different fermentation practices with fruit on the front end. So it's really given us a way to blend even within the same varietal, which is a really strong tool. You can achieve a lot of different complexity, a lot of different aromatics and textures. So I would say for me, our 0 degree and then our 2nd degree Rieslings have been 2 of our favorites to work with each year, to experiment with different sugar levels, but then also different pick dates, different levels of ripeness, things of that nature. So it's always fun to put those together.
They are labors of love, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Oh yes, we make it much more difficult than it needs to be, but the end result is worth it.
And what do you see as, I know you have a variety of brands and you have different markets, but is it very difficult to keep up with changing tastes and public tastes? And
Well, I think part of the Three Brothers model is that there's something here for everyone. So with that built in, we kind of hit all the markets at this point, which is great for us. So it leaves us to play with maybe more of our passion projects like the Riesling, and the Gewürztraminer is one of mine. So yeah.
Yeah, I think our goal as a company, right, is to try and make sure that we're adjusting almost in real time to consumer, changing consumer tastes. Obviously, it doesn't always work, but it's a goal.
And what do you see as the greatest threat at this point to the vineyard, to the natural threat?
Probably climate change. And what that means for what is a cool climate industry. We pride ourselves on our wines that have a decent amount of acid and really good balance and being really food centric here. And the hotter and hotter it gets, it's just changing what we're used to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in one sense. You get more fruit-derived flavors and that sort of thing, but is kind of alarming in general for the region. I think we had those floods 2 years ago. We've had like 2 rounds of droughts, and all of that has been in 5 years' time.
Sure.
Normally, you wouldn't see that so rapidly.
So we were impacted by the flooding
Not
in
here.
2018?
No, not here, fortunately. Yeah, there's good drainage and good wind flow, and it was primarily, I think, further down towards Hector area and Ovid. Yeah.
Sheldrake, I know.
Sheldrake.
Yes. And what would you tell anybody? You can each answer this separately then. What would you tell any woman in particular about going into this career?
Oh my.
Yeah.
I know it's something that you think about all the time, but it's hard maybe to pinpoint it. I think that I would say to make sure that it's something you're doing for love of the work, because it's not an industry that's easy for anyone, male or female. But I think there has to be some real passion behind it to lead you to a position where you can be truly successful in what you're doing.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that as well. And I would also say that if you're working in a primarily male dominated area, there's always ways for you to do things that aren't maybe the way that a man would do it. You don't need to use brute force to move barrels around, for instance. There are tools. It might take you 10 minutes longer, but not to make those sorts of comparisons. I know I worked in a cellar that had primarily guys the first time around, and I felt like I was slower, but I was doing just as good of a job and needed to kind of look at that from a different perspective. So,
and trust yourself. I'm going to interject again. Trust yourself. I think that it's there's been a couple of times early on in my career where I had to take a step back and actually realize how far I had come from coming into this industry with, not being born into it or anything like that. There's a lot to be said for, understanding how much you've learned and going with your gut on something.
Sure. Women have more taste buds too, so there.
And a lot of people think it's a very glamorous winemaking. It's fun and glamorous.
Oh, gosh.
It's you do a lot of cleaning and moving dirty things around.
Right. I like to joke that we're more or less glorified janitors. Cleaning is a big part of the job.
All right. So I guess my next question would be, would you do it all over again if you had?
Gosh.
Oh,
wow.
I think yes, because I've had some amazing experiences, working in Australia and New Zealand and seeing other parts of our country. This has been an amazing way to work and see the world. Would I do some things differently? Probably.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have not done it.
I also wouldn't have not done it. There's been so many opportunities open because of winemaking and to do winemaking, and people I've met along the way, the relationships in the community that I've found is profound. So,
yeah, talking to people, it seems as though there's a great deal of working relationships between all of the wineries. It's not competitive as you would think. If you need help with something or a barrel or whatever, it seems as though there's always a willingness from the people we've talked to, which seems to be very unique.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we have
incredible
Sheldrake's barrels right there. We were shy of barrels, and they had some extra, and exactly. And that's not necessarily every region. I think that's a lot to do with the Finger Lakes itself. So,
see the French oak barrels. Was it difficult to come by, or?
In the middle of harvest,
right. We had a crop come in a little higher than anticipated this year. So, we had planned to have enough cooperage for the volume that we thought we were getting. And in a pinch, Sheldrake helped us out a lot. So it really is testament to the Finger Lakes region. As Kim said, it's not there's a lot of camaraderie in a lot of places, but I think the level of community here is unparalleled.
Oh, great, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or
That's it. Yeah, come taste with us.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate taking time from your busy schedule to be interrupted for this interview. So again, I thank Kim Marconi and Paige Vinson. I'm Monica Wilkinson Kelly, Edith Ford Library. Today is May 13, 2021. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.